أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. For the love of our beloved Prophet and his beloved progeny, please recite a second loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad wa ajil farajah. For the hastening in the return of our beloved 12th Imam, a third final loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad wa ajil farajah. I begin by praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He accepts all of our acts of worship, all of our a'mal, during these days and nights of this month of Muharram, this month of Safar, in which we mourn our beloved Imam and all of the masa'ib that he is going through. Tonight, inshallah, we will continue with the khutbah known as Khutbah al-Muttaqin. This khutbah in which Ali ibn Abi Talib was explaining to his companion, the famous companion Hammam, about the characteristics of those true believers, those true servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as we mentioned at the very beginning of the khutbah, by the end of this khutbah, the companion of Imam Ali, he passed away. And he fainted as per the narration. This is what the narration tells us. And the narration says that Ali ibn Abi Talib was hesitant at the beginning of mentioning these characteristics because of this exact reason. Nonetheless, he goes through these different characteristics. We reached the third characteristic that Amir al-Mu'mineen is mentioning. He said, number 3, the third characteristic of these individuals is this: وَمَلْبَسُهُمْ الْإِقْتِصَادِ. These individuals are the type, they dress in a moderate way, they dress in an average way. And we said that it's not just the dress that the Imam is talking about, it's not just the clothing that the Imam is talking about, he's talking about their lifestyles. This is a very critical issue. And I see this in most of the communities that you see across North America. We have this issue. So this one line that the Imam is mentioning is actually a very important topic. It says, مَلْبَسُهُمْ الْإِقْتِصَادِ. These are the type of individuals who, when you spend time with them, they don't have the type of clothing that has a bunch of stitches in it and, patches all over it and it got holes in it. It's not like that. It's also not the other type where you have, this name brands and, paying money for the type of things that don't really add much value. It's just a brand, it's just a name. You don't see that with them either. They're malbasuhum al-iqtisad. Iqtisad, muqtasid, means the one who's walking in the middle. It's a moderate approach. And of course, the Imam is not just talking about the clothing that they buy. He's also talking about their lifestyles as well. Lifestyles are not the lavish lifestyles. Even if this person is the type of person who makes a lot of money, his lifestyle is not a lavish lifestyle. It's very important. Why is this so important? Because across North America now, especially the Shia population, the Sunni population is a bit different. Their scenarios are a bit different. The Shia population, you will find many of those who migrated to this part of the world as first generation immigrants. Now they've had children. Now the children are growing up. The children are becoming part of the society. And so you have second generation immigrants. First generation immigrants, many of them, most of them, they were struggling with the basics. If they could just put food on the table, if they could just find a job, for example, if they could just lift themselves and their families out of the situation that they were in, it would have been a wonderful achievement. Come to the next generation, no, things are different for them. Many of them are born and raised here. They speak the language. They have a lot of different privileges and opportunities that their parents did not have. And essentially what that means is a lot of economic opportunities for them. Financially, a lot of them are set. His father, his mother might have been in a situation where when they were 20 years old, they were struggling with the basics. This person, when he's 20 years old, he's probably working a corporate job already. 25, he's already going up that ladder. It's very different from their families and their parents. This is what we see in our own community. We see it in other communities as well. But here's the problem. So you find economic opportunities. Is that a problem? No, that's not a problem. It's a wonderful thing. But then you find as this person settles into this lifestyle that's full of opportunities, you will find he almost lives a life that has just as much pressure in it as his parents' life did. Even though economically, things are 10 times easier for him. He's under pressure just the way his parents were under pressure. If you sit with him, he says, oh, I have this payment I have to make, that payment I have to make. And then this person gets married, it puts pressure even on the marriage. This happens all the time. I spoke to someone living in a state where the state is not an expensive state. We have expensive states, we have cheaper states. This is a cheaper state this person was living in. Yes? How much do you make? North of $200,000. And yet you find this marriage has pressure on it. How does that work? It's a lot of money. How does this work? Yes? This is a problem we have. What's the problem? At the very root of it is this. As much as economic opportunities came the way of this person, his cost of living and his standard of living continued to raise with it. As much as he's, alhamdulillah, able to produce, his cost of living is just going up with it. And because his cost of living just continues to rise and grow, the margin he has with what he's making is just the margin that his parents had with what he was making. Feels the same pressure on the household that his parents felt. But your parents were struggling with the basics though. But he's living a life, it almost feels like he's struggling with the basics as well. Why? Because we live in a society and a culture that you're taught that however much you make, you have to spend whatever you have. It's a consumerist culture. Consumerism is all around us. They will tell you this is a fundamental difference between the Islamic perspective and the Western perspective. They will tell you if we don't live a consumerist lifestyle, economy won't work. It all fail. It all fall apart. Everyone has to have that consumerism so that what happens? So that you buy that product, your money goes into this economy and it continues to function. Otherwise, the whole economy will fall apart. I don't want to go into that discussion. That's a very deep discussion. This consumerist lifestyle, where this person is now married, 30 years old, 35 years old, this marriage is under pressure. Why? This makes no sense at all. Why? Because malbasuhum al-iqtisad was not part of his lifestyle. His understanding was whatever I make, it has to go out the other door. Who said this? Ali ibn Abi Talib was the type of person, he produced a lot of wealth. But you looked at his life, it was so modest. So modest. And it's interesting because in the khutbahs of Ali, he himself says, I don't expect you to live this type of lifestyle. He says, Allah, know that your imam is okay with a couple of loaves of bread. That's how he passes his life. And then he says, Allah wa innakum la taqdiruna ala dhalik. Says, know that you won't be able to pull this off. I can only pull this off. I'm not expecting this from you. But he says, you have to try though. He says, help me with your ijtihad. Ijtihad means what? At least try and struggle on this path. It's a little bit, you can't pull this off. You can't live on a loaf of bread. None of us can. But at least get closer to the lifestyle of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And then this person who doesn't live this lifestyle, where he has a moderate approach to his expenses, when there comes times where he actually needs to help, when there comes times that he has to actually invest from that economic opportunity that he has in his life, he's not able to. And when there are poor individuals who don't have food to eat, this person can't give them anything. Why? Because he gave his money to this payment and this corporation and that corporation. Now he's living a lifestyle where he can even barely carry himself. Can he uplift his parents? Can he uplift his relatives? Can he uplift his community? No, he can't do any of those things. Because he's tied down himself. This wealth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with, this is an amana. You don't just sit there and say, alhamdulillah, I'm making this much. So now, instead of driving this car, I can afford this car. Instead of this house, I can afford this, this house instead. And this clothing, now I'm going to spend this much on it. No, malbasuhum al-iqtisad. These are the type of people, they live a moderate lifestyles. If we don't do this, our communities will fail, as unfortunately you will see across North America. For the most part, they are. For the most part, they are. This person will live this type of lifestyle. Now, if you tell him, we're going to educate your child, there's some financial investment you have to make for your child. Then all of a sudden, this person is like, the hands are trembling all of a sudden. Say, but this income, What happens? Because his cost of living is right up there with his income as well. Why? Because he was never taught to live this moderate lifestyle. In Islam, you don't spend just because you have it. It's not the way it works. It's not what Ali ibn Abi Talib taught us. Yes? This is why the hadith of the sixth Imam says this. Recite the salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. He said, ضَمِنْتُ لِمَنْ اِقْتَسَدَ, I am guaranteeing for the one who اِقْتَسَدَ, who lives a moderate lifestyle. Yes? Doesn't go crazy with his income. Okay, I will guarantee for this person what? أَنْ لَا يَفْتَقِرْ, that this person will not become poor. What does this mean? That a person who's making good income will never become poor? No, that's not what the hadith is saying. The hadith is saying if he manages things well, he has a lot of opportunities. But unfortunately, you don't see this. This financial literacy, major lack of it within our communities. Major. This person is just, in Farsi we say, he's just pul misuzuna. He's just like, burning his money. Burning through his money, we'd say in English, yes? There's nothing happening. There's no planning. There's no budgeting. There is no thought process. How am I going to uplift my community with this blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed me with? Ali ibn Abi Talib used to do this. We've gone through these ahadith. That he used to dig the well, and then the moment water would gush out, he would take a pen and a paper, and he would do waqf of it. So Ali was not some lazy, na'udhu billah, worker. No, he worked harder than you and I did. Except his lifestyle was al-iqtisad. He took some of it that he needed. Of course, he was different. Then the rest, he's giving it to his community, to those who are severely in need. For those of us living in this part of this world, we are going to have those opportunities. We have to keep our eyes open so that we don't miss out on those opportunities, because we can play a big role in bringing relief to those who don't have these opportunities. When you go back home and you visit back home, you see this. Many of your own relatives, many of your friends, they might be struggling with the basics at times. And here this second generation immigrant is there. It's almost as if he's struggling with the basics too. No, this is something we have to be careful about. So he says, number 3, these individuals, malbasuhum al-iqtisad, their lifestyle is a moderate one. Recite salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Moving on, number 4, he says, these individuals, mashyuhum at-tawadu'. When they walk, when they talk, when they carry themselves, they do that in a humble manner. They're humble individuals. Have humility with them. Yes? And this humility is something that has been emphasized much in our religion. I want to share a quick story with you from the life of our Prophet. Because he referred to a person who has arrogance, a person who doesn't have humility, as a person who is crazy. He's lost his mind. He's insane, the Prophet has said. You say the Prophet one day is walking in the city of Medina, yes, or the alleys of Medina. They don't have streets or anything like that, or alleys at that time. Medina, many of us might think of it in terms of hundreds of thousands of people living there. No, it was smaller than this, yes. Jabir al-Ansari says the Prophet was walking and he came across a group of people who had gathered. This group of people had gathered around another individual. I don't know if you've seen this. Back home, this happens all the time. Right? You're walking, life is going on, and then you see somewhere, and there's like 50 people gathered somewhere, right? Happens a little less here, but more back home. He said he came across a group of people who had gathered around another individual. And there is multiple ahadith in which the Prophet, when he came across a gathering where people were having, when people had gathered in a certain situation, he would ask them, why is it that you've gathered here? And he would take that moment and he would turn it into a learning moment or a teaching moment. Right? On another occasion, he was in the masjid, he entered into the masjid, people had gathered around someone. This is not this hadith. I'll continue with this hadith momentarily. People had gathered around someone. He asked them, he said, who is this person that's so important? Everyone's gathered around him in the masjid. They said he is a allama. He's the most knowledgeable. He has a lot of knowledge. I said, why is it that you say he has a lot of knowledge? What does he know? He said he knows Arabic poetry and he knows genealogy, the generations and all of that kind of stuff. And the Prophet said, this person is not allama. this person knows some things that are good to know, but there are other things that are much more important to know in life. And then he listed them. He said, your aqa'id and your akhlaq and your day-to-day ahkam. He said, these are the things that if you don't know, you're going to run into problems. He said, what this person knows is also good, but it's the extra layer. If you know it, you know it. If you don't know it, you don't know it. The Prophet used these moments as teaching moments, yes? So he comes across this individual, or these people have gathered, and they've all gathered around an individual. He looks, asks people, says, what is it? They said, rajulun masru', a person who is dealing with sar'a. Sar'a was a disease, it was an illness where you would get seizures. Yes, and of course when you get a seizure, right, na'udhu billah, if someone's dealing with it, you're out of control and it almost seems as though you don't have control over yourself, yes? Everyone had gathered around this person. And forgive me, just going through the hadith, the people used the word that was a bit disrespectful towards this person. Said this is a person who's lost his mind. He's deranged. He's majnoon. People were calling this individual who was having this seizure. And immediately the Prophet changed their perspective. Said, no, this person is not deranged. This person, forgive me, he's not crazy. He's none of this stuff you guys are. He's not insane. He's none of this. He is al-mubtala. He's dealing with a difficulty. He's struggling. He's going through a trial, a tribulation. But let me tell you who is crazy and who is insane and who has lost his mind. Say, Ya Rasulullah, who is this person who's actually crazy? Lost his mind, he's deranged, he's out of it. Because we thought it's this person. Yes? We thought it's the one who, for example, forgive me, it's mentally ill. We would look at this person and say, this person, he's struggling, yes? Prophet said, no, this person he's going through a trial and tribulation. Let me tell you the one who's actually crazy, actually lost his mind. They said, who, Ya Rasulullah? He said, al-mutakabbir. He said, the one who's arrogant. He walks on earth as if he owns everything. And then he describes what this mutakabbir does. He says when he walks in a way as if to belittle everyone around him. And he looks to people over his shoulder. When you want to show someone importance, attention, right? What do? You go sit with them or you turn towards them when they're talking, yes? It says, no, this person who's arrogant, he looks at people like this, over his own shoulder. And he says, when he walks, he does not turn to them with his full body, just kind of from the side. Like, it doesn't matter what you're saying, He says, this is the one who's majnoon. This is the one who's really crazy. He's lost his mind, is this individual. But takabbur doesn't show itself always in this way. It presents itself in a multitude of ways. And I'll list some of those ways. Sometimes if you see that every discussion that you have with another person has to take 2.5 hours, usually one of these two people, or both, are extremely arrogant. Usually something happening here. That they are so stubborn that this discussion can't be a 10-minute discussion. It has to turn into 2.5 hours. Sometimes arrogance shows itself through being stubborn. He won't just say, I'm sorry and move on with life. No, you have to spend hours. I've seen this. Spend hours just to get him to say, I'm sorry. Sometimes arrogance shows itself in this way. Yes? Sometimes arrogance it shows itself in the fact that this person is easily annoyed by everyone. Yes? Someone says, even the slightest comment that might be, not to the best of his liking, he's easily annoyed. Why? Because he gives so much importance to himself. If anyone dare say anything less than utmostly respectful to him, he's taken back by it. And it's a big deal for him. This person, he came in, he didn't give salam to me first. This person came in and he walked away like this. He's annoyed by everything. This is his arrogance is presenting itself in this way. Sometimes arrogance presents itself by bad akhlaq. He sees himself so important, everything starts to bother him. So he gets up in the morning, he doesn't have patience for anybody else. Sometimes it presents itself as bad akhlaq that he has. Sometimes it presents itself as a person who wants to make all of the decisions. In a marital relationship, he can't sit there and say, okay, what do you think? She can't sit there and say, what do you think? What's your opinion? Let's talk about this. No. I have to be the dominant one. I have to be the one who's making all. Otherwise, I'm not macho enough. Otherwise, I'm not important enough. Sometimes it presents itself that way. This arrogance presents itself in a multitude of ways. And our job is to look into our lives and see, do we find traces of these things? Because if we do, there's good news and there's bad news. The bad news is something to worry about. Good news is you remove it from your life becomes so much easier. The one who's not arrogant, his life becomes so much easier. Even if he comes across a person who, God forbid, disrespects him. And in Islam, by the way, you're not supposed to allow people to just disrespect you. You're not supposed to. If they disrespect you, if they're disrespectful towards you, either you let them know or you keep distance with them. Islam is not a religion that says, yes, you're a believer, just allow anyone to come and say anything to you. No, that's not Islam. You're a believer, you have respect, yes? Now sometimes it's a relative, it has certain things he says or she says, maybe you keep a little bit of distance. Yes? I mean, you can't close people's mouths, yes? You can't do that, but maybe you keep a little bit of distance from them. But the less arrogant someone is, the easier it is for him to get on with life when people make comments about him. They make comments about him because he doesn't see himself as so important. He can sit there and say, you know what, I don't agree with what this person is saying, and he's wrong, and what he's saying is disrespectful. But oh well, you can't stop everybody from talking. People talk. But if he's arrogant, it's the end of the world. Because how dare someone disrespect his holiness? Yes? This arrogance, the more you remove it from your life, the easier our lives become. This is the fourth characteristic. He says, وَمَشْيُهُمْ التَّوَاضُعُ. They walk in a humble manner. Then he moves on to the next characteristic, and that is they lower their gaze from those things that are haram to see. And we have a very long and important discussion here, because this is something that our younger brothers and the male in general is tasked with, and that we do not educate our young male and young children with this issue. And that's something that we will get to, inshallah, the following week. With that, inshallah, we'll bring tonight